So this little teapot and this tea are an opportunity that I'm using to show a couple of things. One is an answer to a question that a lot of students ask me in class, which is why do tea companies give a measurement of tea in grams rather than teaspoonfuls? So this tea is actually one of the largest leaves I have in my collection. It's a white tea and it's from Hawaii. You're going to say, oh, but it's brown. But white teas are brown if they are the whole leaf and not just the silver tips. So a white tea like this one has oxidized, it's turned brown, but it's done it naturally just by drying in the sun or in a controlled environment, rather than by being rolled and bruised like a black tea would. So you can actually see in here that the long tips are still pretty silvery and white. But this is 2.5 grams of tea compared with this at 2.5 grams and this at 2.5 grams. If you were to this one, you could measure a tablespoonful or even a teaspoonful, because the pieces are cut and broken kind of small. This Ratnapura that we used the other day, the leaves are still kind of twisty, and so to try to measure those in a spoonful is a little more difficult because there's so much airspace around each leaf, and they kind of criss and cross in the spoon. It's really easier to do a gram weight. But what happens is you get used to looking at an amount of tea in most cases, and you know how much you're going to need to brew the cup. You don't really have to keep weighing out exactly this number of grams. Use that as an approximation. But when you get into a large leaf, something like these large white leaves, and there are other teas from around the world that you're going to find with these nice big leaves, that's really difficult. Now, the reason I chose this white tea from Hawaii paired with this teapot, which is a little inconsistent. If you were going to think about leaf size versus teapot size, that might be confusing. My reason for doing it is something a little more maybe emotional, or my personal private experience. This little teapot is not one that I would use to serve anyone else. It's one I just use for myself when I have a very special limited quantity tea. Our tea farms in Hawaii are very small. Most of them are still just a few acres, and the product that they can create every year is just a few kilos. So even a small package of tea is really hand crafted and in limited supply. If you don't order early in the season, you're not likely to get this year's tea. So the thing about this little teapot is that it comes fitted with a little wire inside that acts as a screen to keep almost all the leaf material in the little pot. I got this one in Chinatown in San Francisco in a little shop on Grant Street. And when I saw it, what appealed to me about it, it wasn't very expensive, but it's when I have that leaf that I really want to pay attention to. I'm also careful not to put in a really boiling hot water. In fact, I use about the same temperature that I do for green, which might be at around 175, 180 degrees. It's actually pretty tolerant of warmer temperatures, but I like to let the flavor come out gradually from the leaf. And so if I use a lower temperature, I can have several different infusions, and I taste the leaf, let's say, step by step. One person described it to me as you sort of peel the flavor off the leaf from the outside to the inside. And by using cooler water, you can control sort of how much flavor you pull out of that leaf. The other thing about using this little teapot and the glass is I can watch the color as it comes up. And if I don't know the tea that well, if this is the first time that I've brewed this leaf, I'm trying to get every bit of information about it as I go along. I don't want to make an assumption that I won't have any flavor coming out of it unless I leave it in with the leaves for 3 minutes, because then I might miss that little first subtle flavor. But I can start to see the color change in the tea. So when does it become tea? Is it tea yet? It's very light. That's for your taste to decide. You can see it's been about a minute and a half, and the liquor in this small teapot is a very attractive yellow. So I'm not going to wait any longer. I want to taste that. I'm going to pour that off, and I'm going to let this remaining water in this leaf brew just a little bit longer. This I'm going to let sit for a minute until it's cooled down a bit, because I believe that I taste more with a slightly cooler temperature. And then a minute later, I'll pour an additional cup. So now I've poured 2 cups. This one was 1 minute brewing. This is 2 minutes of brewing. So now that it's been 3 minutes, I'm going to actually take all of the remaining tea that's in this little pot. Doesn't it surprise you that there was actually so much tea in there? And I empty it. I make sure that I appreciate the leaf. And what I do with my tongs then is pull out the leaf and enjoy seeing it completely restored. This is a little bit of stem and 2 gorgeous leaves. So I'll put up some links today specifically about the tea from Hawaii, and wish you happy tea time. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.